This isn't groundbreaking news. I know that I've had cognitive awareness of this. This is the same thing that happens to us all the time too, where we'll get a piece of information that will go into our brain, right? I probably have put these pieces together at some point along the journey, but now it's coming back around again to highlight even more. So it's like a re-remembrance of something that I already knew. Like I said, this isn't like, a huge aha moment where I'm putting pieces together. It's just like, fuck, I need to be way more cognitively connected to what is going on with this nervous system, because that is going to allow me to catch unhealthy coping mechanisms sooner.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
Baby, I've been thinking a lot about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah?
Yeah, because it stuck with me after Jiu-Jitsu last weekend, or I don't remember when it was. It was recent though. I think it was last weekend. And it's all somatic stuff. It's all getting into my body and trying to heal. And truthfully, it's like going back years and years and years, because when we started yoga 2-3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I didn't realize how disconnected I was from my body, right? And then through the process of like yoga and breath and all sorts of different things, I'm getting more and more and more connected to my body.
Oh.
And I'm also recognizing that so much, like for example, yesterday, right? You were present with us.
I was there.
You were here. You were in the house. Yesterday was a very strange day. We had like a very wonky, bizarro energy kind of like weird day yesterday. And I was thinking about it this morning when I woke up. That's the other thing too, is I woke up this morning like at 3 or 2:30 or something, right? And I totally thought that it was just my normal wake up time. Turns out it wasn't. I had to go back to bed. Anyways, at some point when I woke up, I was processing my nervous system and I was thinking about it. And I was thinking about how the previous day was super dysregulated. And I was trying to understand why, right? The question is always why. And it dawned on me at some point that, because sometimes the why doesn't really matter. Why we're upset, why we're having a bad day, why we're feeling whatever we're feeling. Truthfully, I don't think it probably matters the majority of the time, right? And what I recognized in my stupor of sleep deprivedness in the middle of the night, when oftentimes wisdom will come to me, was that so much of what is taking place in my life and in my body is connected to my nervous system. Surprise, right? I know that that's like groundbreaking news that nobody's going to like, what? Stop the presses. Yeah, there's still presses, aren't there?
There's still presses.
Right.
Like, you heard it here, folks. Or what? You heard it here first, folks.
I love the idea of stopping a press. Stop it! Go over and push the big red button.
Right.
Anyways, I was thinking about it through this lens where if I'm just regulating a nervous system, so my nervous system kind of has a normal homeostasis kind of place, and it will fluctuate throughout my day, ups and downs. And anytime that nervous system starts to get too taxed and too overwhelmed by anything, right? It's never one thing that is activating my nervous system. It's a multitude of things. I was thinking about how hot it's been lately. Like we got a little streak of fucking summer coming through Tennessee right now where it's hot. Like we're having some really hot days. That's taxing my nervous system. Very rarely do I think about how the temperature outside or going outside is somehow affecting my mood, right? Those two things don't really coexist in my brain at the same time. So I'm thinking about it through this lens now where my nervous system is doing this thing. And as soon as my nervous system starts to get really dysregulated, almost like, past 30% or 40% or 50% or whatever, right? There comes a point where it tips the scales and it's no longer just kind of a natural ebb and flow. And now I don't have the capacity to regulate it in a sense. And I know that I always have capacity to regulate it, right? But it's passed over the level where I can just navigate it with normal, everyday kind of things that I would navigate it with.
It's not like a self-regulating or a passive regulation. You have to be cognitively
Actively
aware, actively
regulating my
engaged
nervous
in
system, right?
regulating it. I get
Once
that.
it crosses over that barrier to where now I have to actively focus on regulating my nervous system, it's almost too late. Because at that point, what's happening is my coping mechanisms are coming in to regulate my nervous system, right?
Stand back, we got this.
And my unconscious or subconscious or under the surface coping mechanisms that were maladaptive from childhood are the ones that come in and regulate at that point. And they're all unhealthy. They're all toxic, right? They served a purpose. We've gone through this over and over again. We've talked about this before, but like all of those coping mechanisms, food, right, adrenaline, I mean, the ability for me to just doom scroll all day long and get completely lost. All of these things, like when we have really bad ADD days where we're feeling like we can't even stay focused for a second on something, that I think is more connected to where my nervous system is than just me like having a bad ADD day. I think that's the surface level explanation of what's going on underneath the surface. Anyways, I'm describing all of this because I want to talk about it and I want to see what you think about it. But what I recognized was it was just like this new level of awareness that I haven't had before around my nervous system and how much, like how many things will affect it. Because truthfully, I'm always thinking about it through this lens where it's like what affects my nervous system. Well, it's moods, it's emotions, it's you say something, I experience something, I see something, I hear something, all of those things apply. But what I didn't really take into consideration was like what I was talking about, right? The temperature. It's been really, really hot. If I'm not eating properly over the course of several days, if I'm not getting enough fluid, it's all of these things that are all of these things that I think we forget about and take for granted that are also connected to my physical body. Those things are going to affect my nervous system as well. Like this isn't, like I said, this isn't groundbreaking news. I know that I've had cognitive awareness of this. This is the same thing that happens to us all the time too, where we'll get a piece of information that will go into our brain, right? I probably have put these pieces together at some point along the journey, but now it's coming back around again to highlight even more. So it's like a re-remembrance of something that I already knew. Like I said, this isn't like, oh, a huge aha moment where I'm putting pieces together. It's just like, fuck, I need to be way more cognitively connected to what is going on with this nervous system, because that is going to allow me to catch unhealthy coping mechanisms sooner. Because it's almost like food, for example, diet will go way off, into the way off into the ditch. That process, I'm always associating that with emotions, where I'm an emotional eater and I'll overeat and all these kind of things, right? It's not to say that that's not a factor. Of course, that's a factor. But I think it's so much more connected now to nervous system, where if my nervous system is already crossed over that barrier where I need to be actively engaged in regulating it, then it's going to be much easier for me to use food to try to regulate it in that subconscious way, right? In that maladaptive way that I experienced childhood. I've been talking a lot. I want to hear what you think about this.
Oh.
Sorry. Maybe I haven't been talking a lot.
You haven't been talking a lot.
It always feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It always feels like, well, I've been talking for at least 90 seconds. So it's your turn to talk now.
Yeah, when you're the one that's doing it, it's like clearly the podcast is almost over. I feel like I've talked for an hour,
Whew.
right? And you're like, no,
Is all of that making sense?
It is making sense on so many different levels. I think the one that's like really sticking out right now is the food, the nervous system, because as like going into this, I'm sitting here and I'm like stressed out. I'm feeling my body, my nervous system is not in a parasympathetic state right now. I'm very I'm noticing things. So I keep trying to remind myself to breathe. I'm like over here just
right. You have to actively.
I have to
start
actively
regulating
breathe,
it.
and then I'm also trying to be careful to not be like in the mic. No, so I'm like
breathwork is great for
breathe
audio.
slowly away from the mic, and so it's just these little things that I'm experiencing in the moment. But you were hitting on food, and I kind of want to jump to that one just for a moment.
Well, food is so sexy.
Food is sexy.
That's why I hit on it. It's pretty punny, right?
That was very funny. It like caught me completely off guard.
Yeah.
I was gonna like start being like avocado, you know that one, and then you swooped in with the greatest punchline that could. Okay, I think I'm even blushing a little bit. I don't know why, but that was just you got me so good. You got me so good. Okay, what was I gonna say?
I don't know, babe.
Oh my goodness.
You were talking about having awareness of the food thing and
Okay, how you associate when your nervous system, the emotional eater, you have all that, but you notice that it's easier for you to go to that coping mechanism. And I had it come up recently. I mean, obviously, it's like these things like I'm a slow burn. Like there's things that does come, like I can understand a concept and get it. And like, yeah, that makes sense. Go, let's go. ADHD brain, let's go. I'm ready. All horses going one way. And then, but that doesn't mean that like I get it. Like I cognitively go get it and understand that because, 1 + 2 = 3 minus, you know what I mean? I can get that. I can get that this is what's taking place, but it doesn't click. I just, it's like the whole school system. You're just regurgitating memorization.
mm-hmm.
Like, I understand this is how it works. Here's the da-da-da-da-da, why. But I'm a slow burn for the understanding other than I can just tell you, it's the, oh, I get it. I get it. And now I can start to see, and then it makes sense. And then I start connecting all of these dots that make me sound like a crazy person when I try to get them. It's like that string theory up on the wall. I'm like, look it. Now it makes sense.
I think that's a scene from Is it Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I don't know.
Anyways, yeah, we see that real
I know
all the
the
time.
meme or the real, but yeah. So that's what it feels like for me. And so this is like one of those things where you're talking about bringing in the somatic, not the somatic, but
like the active awareness of it.
The active awareness of it on different parts, different things that we're mentioning. But the food one came up recently, right? Because it's something I always wear, emotional eater. I eat when I'm upset. When it's extreme stress, I can't eat. But that's not like it takes me to the point of where I'm in a nervous breakdown. I can choose to not eat when I'm dealing with food issues. I can choose to not eat when I'm trying to, like when old coping mechanisms of restriction come in. But when I can't eat, it's like I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. Here we go. It's going to get crazy. But when it's the regulation, I can be doing well, like taking care of my body, being healthy in a sense, like feeling regulated. So I'm drinking water. I'm not eating just to eat. I'm like craving healthy things. I'm craving movement in my body. But if something comes in that takes me to that dysregulation point to where now it's not systems working, I'm activated, and now I have to actively take care of my nervous system and start to make choices. When that happens, I had the awareness recently that was like, oh, I'm stressed. And I could tell because I went from being not hungry to immediately like, oh, I need to eat. I need to eat right now.
But you had that awareness in that moment?
Awareness. And it was like, and then I started watching it, and it's happened a few times. Now, I know it happens all the time, but it hasn't been something that hasn't been over here in the peripheral. It's something that finally went, whoom.
So like the hunger kicks in not as, oh, I'm hungry and I should eat and feed my body, right? My body's hungry, needs fuel. But it kicks in as a nervous system regulation, as a coping mechanism.
As a coping mechanism. So that's what I kicks in to soothe. It's like, I am stressed. I need to eat. I need something to fill this. I need something to help me push it down and bury it away. Help me so it's an immediate, no, intermittent fasting is off. Healthy choices are off. I'm hungry and I need to eat. And it's like, I don't even taste the food. I binge. It's like, I need to chew. I need to feel the sensation. I need to feel that I'm accomplishing something. And it's weird too, because it's not even like small lady like bites, right? It's like I'm gulping it down so I can feel it's a whole bizarre system that kicks off into a coping mechanism with food. And it goes way deeper, but we don't need to get into that right now. It'll be a podcast on that. So that's was something that has clicked in recently, that I'm having awareness of just when it comes to food and the somatic need that I need to feel regulated.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I can relate to a lot of that. The whole, it's like recognizing when that hunger kicks in because of anxiety or stress or even fear, right? I don't know if I've had that moment yet. Obviously I'm hungry. Like I can recognize when I'm hungry, but there is definitely a difference between having that hunger pain versus, oh, I need to satiate myself. I need to soothe myself. I need to fix the thing that's going on inside me right now that I can't control, that I don't like. That's a really distinct, different feeling.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had another level of it yesterday that hit of awareness of like really starting to get into my body and learning my body's like when it's talking to me, because I also get distracted from eating, busy. I get distracted. There's so much trapped up with food. I know. I need to look into that. That's on my list of shit I need to heal and get to. I know. But I had this moment of like recognizing where, like, for instance, where my body was in my cycle and that it was starting to shift. I was getting closer to my moon, closer to my period, closer to that, because I was suddenly not able to go as long. I was feeling the hunger too, but I wasn't like, oh, I need food. It was that my body telling me that I was hungry, which is signs that I don't think I recognize as signs, or I don't let it get to. Anyways, I was starting to feel really tired. I was feeling like foggy. I was feeling like weirdness, like my body telling me that it needed nutrients as opposed to body telling me it needed to emotionally soothe.
Right.
And it was just like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, I can tell I need food, but I'm not even hungry. And then when I sit in, I could like, oh, I can actually, this is hunger. Like I didn't have the recognize, because when I think I'm hungry, it's something completely different. And when my body needs food, those are symptoms that I've ignored and pushed away. Those are needs. And so it's like, I've been unpacking that a lot. I know this isn't a food episode, but for me, when you were saying that, I'm like, this is hitting hard in my space right now. And I'm recognizing my body's needs because I'm getting into my somatic body because of things that are starting to have more awareness. So I'm recognizing not action, coping mechanism and versus bodily needs. And that is something that those are dots that I haven't been able to connect.
Right. Yeah, that's really big awareness. That's really big awareness. This is all making me think about, because I'm always thinking about this body that I'm in. And lately I've been looking at it through the lens of just this awesome spaceship that I get to fly around in, right? Where I'm traveling through space like this is my space suit in a sense, right? And I think about it, when I think about it through that lens, I think about it like this, where this body of mine was designed to exist in this reality, in this dimension, in this universe, and whatever we want to think of it as, even just on this planet. And I haven't really been aware of everything that this body does for the vast majority of my life. So like when I use that metaphor of a spaceship, it feels like I have been almost just a passenger on this spaceship, not really fully aware of what's been going on. Obviously, there's tons of times when I've dissociated from my body and left, but now what it feels like is I have the not just the ability, but like, oh, I'm on the deck of this spaceship. I have awareness of like I'm on the bridge. I understand what's going on. I have awareness of like all the signals and the control board, and I'm privy to everything now, and I can see how it's all interconnected and working. And then I have these deeper awarenesses where it's like, oh, there's a chance that your nervous system is dysregulated because it's been so hot outside lately, and you haven't taken that into consideration, and that's just one factor on top of all these other factors, right? I'm always going towards emotional things as the cause of why I'm in a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. And what I'm recognizing is that it might be physical things now. that are causing this dysregulation. And of course, always, right, it's never one thing, it's always a multitude of things.
Yeah.
But I'm really I really like having this connection to my body in a deeper way rather than just like, oh, my arm hurts or I'm hungry or I'm tired. All of those things are really good, but it feels like a more total picture. It feels like I have a broader scope now of understanding of how I work and how things work and how it all connects and ticks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty grateful for it.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah. That awareness of it, because it seem so simple that temperature affects it, but it's something that we overlook a lot of times. And it's one of those there, because when the weather's nice outside, we walk outside and it feels good. It's like, oh, it feels great.
Right.
You can feel it when the sun hits just right, when the temperature's right, when the crisp, and when it's kind of like we've shimmied away from the cold, we've shimmied away from the hot, try to regulate it within a structure, or if we have to be outside for long, like we're going to go camping at some point, probably when this comes out, we've already been back, but there's part of it that's like, what's the AC? I'm planning my mood around being like hot in a sense.
Yeah.
Like I know, oh, we're going to be really hot. I get cranky if I get really hot.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like there's so many times I have these aha moments that for me are like aha moments. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, my nervous system. And I have awareness of it now, right? And then we talk about it and I'm like, that's how you would explain it to a child. Do you know what I mean?
Oh.
Because you're like,
What do you mean there?
like what you just said. This isn't a bad thing. I'm just chuckling at myself because there's parts of me that I'm learning about and putting pieces together that I was never taught. And so you just described it, you're like, when it's hot outside, I get cranky. Like that's how I would describe it to a kid. I would be like, how sometimes when it's hot outside, like you just get a little cranky and you don't feel good because it's all hot and it's uncomfortable. And they'd be like, yeah, you could describe it that way. You're like, that's your nervous system saying, something's off and we need to fix it. We need to regulate it. We need to do things to take care of it. And those are the things that we, get water, move to shade, come inside, cool off. All these different little things are just ways to help regulate our body. But there's a part of me that hasn't put all of those pieces together, even as a grown-ass adult. And so it kind of cracks me up when I have these moments where I'm like, hear me out. I don't know if you know this, but our nervous systems are affected by a variety of things that we have control over and that we can. That's the part that I get really excited about is, oh, I can fix this. Like we had a conversation about this recently too, do you remember what it was about? I don't remember, but it was like when I have moments now of awareness, especially when it comes to, oh gosh, babe, this one was recent too. I don't know if it's something that we want to talk about because I don't honestly remember what it is. It might be something that we want to talk about, but it was the awareness of like, oh, that's a behavior that I can fix. Oh, it's kind of the mirroring thing. That's what it was, where it's like suddenly I'm projecting something that I'm doing onto you. And when I have awareness that that's happening, suddenly I'm like, I'm so grateful that I can see that now. And rather than judging myself and being hard on myself or denying it, right? Rather than spending like the first 8 years of our relationship where I'm just like, oh no, it's not me, it's you. Now I can be like, oh wait, it's me. And I can fix it. I have control over that part. I can change that behavior. I don't need to just project those things outwards and judge the world around me for the things that I can't deal with or look at or fix. I can use that process now. And that excites me. Like that just fires me up. And I'm like, hell yeah, I can fix this. So it's that was the same awareness where this morning I was like, oh, wow, that's great. Because I have control over this. I can now look at a better understanding of how to regulate my nervous system so that it doesn't get to that point where I have to take active steps, right? Where I don't suddenly need to be like, okay, I got to see, and there's nothing wrong with having to do those things. Those things are great. I'm really grateful that we have healthy coping mechanisms for nervous system regulation now, right? Because we didn't for a very, very long time. What's one of your favorite things that you do to help that nervous system regulation? Can you think of one off the top of your head? I know sometimes we ask questions like this and you're like, I have no fucking idea. That's a rando question. I can answer first because I've got one.
Okay, you go ahead. You answer first.
Did you have one that come to mind?
Go for it.
You're cute. I got to take a
Yeah,
drink.
you go ahead and take a drink. I'm trying to think.
You're throwing me some dagger eyes.
I'm not trying to. I'm trying to keep, because you've steered us away from a conversation that I want to bring us back to.
Take us back.
But before we do, I want to hear this part.
Marty, we've got to go back.
So
I've got a great Doc Brown impression.
you do.
Like, if you're not familiar with my Doc Brown impression, you're missing out.
So
Go
Doc
ahead.
Brown us.
No, you're okay. I'm
Tell
not
us
going to
your-
Doc
tell
Brown
us
us.
your
That
favorite-
sounds like one of those weird sex things. Have you been Doc Browned? What are you talking about? Well, it's when they do that. No. Have you guys Doc Browned before?
Oh, goodness.
Totally sounds like a
So
sex
it
thing that
does,
nobody
it
wants to
does,
do
it
either.
does. Oh, well, you don't know.
Like, what was that one a
Urban
while
Dic-
back? Like the Dirty Sanchez or something? There was one like that.
I think that's like poop.
Shitting on your
I
chest or
think
something.
so.
Yeah.
I think that's what that is.
That sounds like a
that
Doc
does
Brown.
sound like a Doc Brown.
Well, if you come up with that, let us know. Send
Okay,
it in.
so we're gonna
Marty, we've got to
gonna
Doc Brown
skip-
this.
we're gonna skedoodle past that.
Yeah, you want to go back to me as a kid.
No, first, tell me we can remember the coping mechanisms. So what we're doing now, or what's the one thing that we're somatic thing we're doing now? When you were talking about the weather, when you were talking about how it's affecting you, and I shared, I'm actively validating you and how I see that in these little points. I haven't had the quite awareness of this, but like sitting with it, like I'm validating you. Yes, that's the thing. Yes, I see how it's played a role. And yes, I agree with you. And now I can draw connections to. I can see the way that it was. You mentioned that it's like explaining it to a child and how you have all these big things. And then you say like sitting here as this grown ass man and experiencing it. I just kind of wanted to touch on that just for a little bit, some awareness that maybe might be helpful on that, or healing in that for anybody that is experiencing it. That's what it's about. Nobody taught you. You're figuring this stuff out. And we kind of touched on this earlier today, where sometimes it feels scary to like when I'm listening to something and learning something, sometimes it feels scary to learn something in front of you. Sometimes it feels scary to learn something in front of other people because I feel like I'm going to get shamed for not already knowing it, for not having this information. So when you're learning something, I'm like, it feels like it's common knowledge for a lot of people. But I'm just getting to,
Right,
I'm just getting to that. I'm
the
just showing
party.
up. Yeah, I'm just getting here. I'm like, oh, everybody knows about this. I didn't.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. We set a goal for ourselves that we want to reach over 1 million people on YouTube. And truthfully, we're going to need your help to get there. So if you haven't yet, head over to YouTube and subscribe to the Steph Craig Show. And be sure to click that notification button so that you get a little ding every time we release a new episode. We're really grateful that you chose to listen to our podcast, and we hope that you're enjoying this episode. Now let's get back to it.
I didn't see this
I get
behavior.
that a lot. I feel that a lot.
So that's kind of what I was seeing there on that space. And it's also a really good sign of healing. It's a really good sign of healing and growing. I just finished I think it's Pia Melody. Is that her last name? Is it Pia Melody? Because I got Pia Melody and Melody Beatty. And so I'm like, is it a
No, I think
is
Pia
it a
Melody.
before and after Wheel of Fortune name? Or is, I think that's it. I just finished one of her codependent books. And she said something that was so profound for me. And I didn't know we were going to talk about it. So the quote's not going to be, accurate.
Yeah.
But she was talking about it, and she talked about a lot of things, a lot of abuse. It's a tough book. It's a tough book where it's like really looking at behaviors you experienced, maybe behaviors that you've continued on. We're we're getting real with ourselves and our experiences book, that it was good. But there was this part that hit because I feel regressed. I feel a lot. I'm like, why am I acting like this? Why am I like, what's wrong with me? Like, come on. You know, now that I'm safer, I'm acting like a child. Now that I'm safer, like I'm reactive and I'm feeling like you don't love me. You don't want to spend attention. You know, all of these things that are coming up, behaviors that make me sick. You know, like, what is wrong with you? Knock that shit off. That kind of sounds like a different voice, right? But also learning new things, learning this stuff. And so the stuff that's coming to you in the middle of the night and feeling like that's how you would explain it to a child and the grown-ass man. It came, like, I'm circling back. She was talking about how these behaviors are coming up in her space now, where she never acted like this before. But now that she's healing this, she's looking at this, she's catching herself acting like a child in this sense. And instead of like berating or being mean, she's like, oh, it's because I'm learning it. That's how your brain, like, I never got to act like this as a child. So now I'm literally going through the steps. You can't skip all the steps when you didn't learn something. You have to learn how to do it with the steps. You don't just, like the saying goes, you know, you just don't go from, you know, being immobile to running a marathon. There's so many steps. So when you're starting to recognize the parts of you that are learning, these little things that are coming on, like this awareness that you hadn't been able to contextualize, but yeah, you've heard it before and you're seeing it. That's like you're feeling safe enough. You're healing, you're learning, you're bringing those parts out that got skipped over and they're like coming online. It's a really cool thing. It's not I'm a grown ass man. It's like, oh, hell yeah. You know, here we go.
I'm so glad that you're bringing this up. I wanted to, the reason I'm going to my phone is because I got to pull up the episode. I listened to a recent episode of We Can Do Hard Things, and I wanted to make sure and get the guest's name who was on it. Prentice Hemphill. It's a recent episode of We Can Do Hard Things. Go listen to it.
Go listen to it? Okay.
And she was talking about so as a child, we taught ourselves all of these coping mechanisms, right? So we learned both by seeing and also we had to figure stuff out, right? So we taught ourselves all of these kind of maladaptive coping mechanisms from childhood that we had to survive. We can teach ourselves now new things.
Yes.
So like, I love that you're describing it this way because, and then that voice that we have, right? Mine was, I'm a grown ass man. I should know this shit already. And yours was, what was yours? Because you commented on it. That sounded like somebody else's voice. Do you remember what you said?
I don't remember what I said.
Well, all that negative self-talk, right?
Yeah.
All that part of us that's like, man, I'm so stupid. Obviously our nervous system is affected by weather, right? Our body goes outside and gets hot, and that's going to make us feel bad. That makes sense. And there's a part of me that is putting those pieces together like I am a child. And I'm teaching my child, hey, bud, this happens, and you can control that. You're like a lot of this healing that I feel like you and I are both in right now. I know for me specifically, it's this recognition of, wait a minute, I can do things, right? I have control of this. This is up to me. Not in oh my God, it's all up to me and I don't know what I'm going to do now and I'm going to freeze. But it's like, oh, I can fucking fix this. Even from like the awareness of like, yeah, I don't like that person. I don't have to interact with that person. That person doesn't have to be in my life. That is not an option as a child.
Yeah.
Right? That's just simply not an option as a child to where it's like, hey, I don't like this person. Sucks to be you, kid. You got to deal with that.
Yeah.
Right?
On top of that, not only do you have to deal with that, go give him a hug.
Right?
Quit being like that. Go give him a hug.
So much of what's happening, I feel like for me right now, is getting the opportunity to take this intellectual understanding of like the human experience that, yeah, there's a part of my brain that is very like, I'm smart, I'm an intelligent person, I understand things, but then I almost have to break it down in these little bite-sized chunks of exactly how I would explain it to my 5-year-old, right? That 5-year-old little boy that's inside of me that's like, hey, you're talking about like every time we talk about nervous system and you throw out sympathetic and parasympathetic, my 44, how old am I, 43? My 43-year-old brain does not remember what those are. I don't understand those words. I know that those words describe activated or at rest, right? Your nervous system nice and calm, or your nervous system activated. I can never remember which one they are. So I don't use those terms because I can't remember which ones they are. But what my little 5-year-old understands is like, hey, buddy, you know when you're hot? Yeah, it's hot outside, right? And you know how good it feels to come inside and get some fresh water? You're like, yeah, that feels so good. Yeah, that's you connected to your body and connected to your nervous system and taking steps to regulate it.
Yes.
And you get to do that. You get to make those decisions for yourself. You have the ability to do that. And at this point in my life, right, I get to do it all. I have control over everything in my life. I can decide what I want and what I don't want. I can decide how I'm going to feel about things or what things I'm going to feel about. There's certain things that I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to feel that right now. And I don't mean it in a passive way. I don't mean it in an avoidance way. But I'm trying to think of an example because there's certain things where, like, I could get all really hot and bothered and worked up about something that I might normally have in the past. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's not something that I need to worry about. That's not something that I need to spend energy on. That's not something that I need to allow into my space because I know that that will dysregulate me. I know that my nervous system will go haywire if I go and experience or think about or deal with that stuff, or even just let that stuff into my life, right? And I'm not even just talking about like the things that come up through healing and like, yeah, there's things that I need to address and look at. I'm talking about like just external, do you know what I mean? Like for example, this makes sense, right? I don't need to explain it more. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're doing a really good
Right.
job.
But it's like, sometimes you'll be like, did you hear? And then you'll tell me something. And I'm like, no, I didn't hear. We were talking about our little community here in Tennessee that we live in, where we have, every small town in America and probably worldwide, right? You've got those local little 411 community pages on Facebook where everybody is offering up their 2 cents about what's going on at the park, right? I don't really pay attention to any of those things. And it's not because I don't care, but it is because I don't care. And I've learned over the years that I don't have to care. I don't have to engage with that stuff because it doesn't really affect my life. I'm not really involved with it. And if I choose to go towards it, it's activating my nervous system. So there's a lot of things that I choose not to go towards anymore because I know that it activates my nervous system and I don't like that. So that's like a really big deal too, right? That to me is a big conceptual understanding that I've developed over years that genuinely I didn't have. I didn't recognize that I can choose what I consume and what I allow into my space based off of how it makes me feel. I mean, that alone is just like if I explain that to a 5-year-old, they'd be like, what? What are you talking about? I can decide? They're like, yeah, you actually get to decide. But as a 5-year-old, you don't get to. That's the other hard part, right? So many of these things are just because, like, it sucks to be a kid. Yeah. It sucks to have to attach to people in order to survive, right? And then what are you willing to do in order to maintain that attachment? Well, sacrifice everything, including your mental and emotional health, your physical health, your well-being, right? Just so that you can survive on a purely animalistic basis. You're looking at me very strangely. I'm so nervous.
Oh.
How many times do we do these podcasts where we get all vulnerable with each other and then we're like, you're looking at me weird.
Yeah,
you shifted.
It's not like you're looking at me weird. It's like, oh, I just recognize that you can see me.
Right.
You see me. I was vulnerable. You see me. You're seeing me. Ah.
This feels really stupid. I feel really stupid right
wow.
now because I feel like I'm talking about that 5-year-old part of me as an adult. And like I hear the narrative that oftentimes I'll project this narrative that I have in my head outwards, especially when we're on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Where I hear somebody out there listening. Oftentimes, and this really sucks too, honestly. See how I get all uncomfortable?
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Like that voice sounds like my oldest brother,
Okay.
where he's super critical. And he's like, oh, congratulations. You figured out that going outside affects your nervous system. Good job. Way to go. With all the sarcasm, right? So there's a part of me that feels really silly right now that we've been talking for whatever, half an hour about these things. And somebody listening is like, what the fuck are these people talking about? This is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I have to really battle against that. Like now I'm shutting down. I can feel my nervous. So you got to talk.
That
baby.
part is so valid. Like that part is real. Those fears are real. Those experiences, all of that is so valid. Like going into inner child work and really bringing that stuff out. And you're not only being vulnerable and visible, you're doing it publicly.
Yeah.
Like we have people listening to us and hearing that. So that was really brave. All of that coming up is a big deal. All of that. And like, there's the part of me that wants to scoot past that and reassure and like start to like make it better.
Right. You got to fix it for me.
Right. And I'm like also going to go fight people. I'm like, psh.
Right.
But the fact is that it's really vulnerable. It's really scary going into and healing the inner child, healing these parts of you that were so hurt and so hurt. We can just leave it at that, that we're so hurt, whether through actions or inactions, and coming through as an adult and allowing them to surface and heal to try and like not allow it to control your life or to repeat is a big deal. And it's really, really hard to feel. Like I'm afraid to learn in front of you because I'm stupid for not even knowing. I totally understand how you're feeling.
That's totally the little kid thing that we're talking about. That's the dynamic right there.
You're going to be mad at me. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to laugh at me. You're going to make fun of me. You're going to discard me. You're going to hurt me. All of these reasons because I didn't have this information. That's not true. You don't do that. But that's what it feels like. So I totally understand how you're feeling right now. It makes complete sense. It sucks. And I bet that there's a lot of other people listening that can relate, that are relating. I bet those people are hearing it. And if not like we are, this is our process. We're getting through it. This is what we do. And you just did it. And I'm doing it.
Well, let's fucking end. No, I'm teasing.
You mentioned like earlier, you have like, I think you asked me what my go-to somatic practice is right now. Was it a somatic practice or
yeah? But before we get there, before we go to that,
I think we should do it real fast.
Right, we might need to calm these nervous systems a little bit. This topic that we're fleshing out right now that we're talking about, I'm really excited about.
Okay.
Like the idea that we get this opportunity to teach our younger parts, these little inner children, things that we get to help them understand life things. We get to help them understand how their body works. We get to help them understand how their emotions work.
How to have those safe, healthy relationships when so much of it has been put around who we had to be attached to. How now we get to form healthy attachments. And neither of us were taught how to form healthy attachments. So it's a big deal. It's really exciting.
It is exciting. And looking at it now as I'm sitting here and we're talking about it, and yes, it's uncomfortable and yes, it's hard and everything like that, but I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I really like this lens of getting the opportunity to teach my inner child how to be just how to be, right? Just how to feel, how to take care of themselves, how to move through the world. That's a new shift in perspective for me that I'm going to kind of take away from this, where that's the lens that I'm going to kind of look at things now. Because the truth of it is, I mean, we talk about these coping mechanisms that are really toxic and unhealthy, right? We're talking about food earlier, but we have all of them. I have all of them. I've got all toxic, unhealthy coping mechanisms in me, right? I've got addiction, I've got drinking, alcohol, sex, violence, adrenaline, whatever the source of unhealthy coping mechanisms, I've got them. I've done them. I've incorporated them into my life over the course of my life. And the idea that all of those things stemmed from this time period in my life as a child where I had to learn where I had to teach myself how to survive. And now I get to teach myself other ways, right? I get to unlearn those unhealthy ways and instead learn these healthy ways, these ways that are actually beneficial for me. So I'm getting really excited by this, even though it seems like there's a part of me too that can see it through the lens of like, well, this is what you're doing anyways, but just adding this little nuanced layer to it where it's like, oh, I get to teach. I love teaching. I love sharing the wisdom that I have and that I have gleaned over the course of my life. And the idea that I get to teach, here I am, 44. I keep wanting to be 44 like you, babe.
I know, it's
You're
pretty
so
cool
cool.
over here.
I'm 43. Stephanie's 44. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing you. It's okay that you're 44.
It is okay
I
that I'm
still love you
44.
that
I
you're
like 44. 44
40s are
is a
good to
great
us,
year.
right? So far, so good.
Yeah. I'm not having that like, oh, I'm 44 thing. Like maybe I don't know. I was going to say maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I'm like, y'all are doing it wrong. I like 44.
Right.
44 is so cool. And it does have a lot to do with the numerology of it, but I'm liking 44.
They're good numbers.
I'm liking 44. So that's right. And it makes sense that you want to be here. It makes sense that you want to be cool like me.
Right. And I love the idea that I get to now teach myself these concepts that I'm learning. So it's like I'm in, adult school as an adult, and I get to go back and teach 5-year-old Craig. I'm like, dude, I just learned this crazy thing you're not going to believe.
Yeah.
Did you know? Actually, I'm going to share this one with you. This was some neuroscientist clip reel, something that I saw. So your sense of smell is really, really connected to like emotions and survival and all of those things. And part of the reason why it's so, and I'm butchering all of this. So if you're a super smart scientist guy, remember we're explaining this to 5-year-old children inside of us. Part of the reason why it's so strong is because it gets to the sense, like I'm going to like I said, I'm going to butcher all of this. So for example, your optics, like your vision, in order for that signal to get to the part of your brain that can interpret it, it has to go up and around the top of your skull and down to the back part where that part of your brain exists. So it's just a longer pathway to get there, even though it happens so quickly, obviously, right? But your sense of smell is like right behind your nose. So it goes right to where the amygdala is, passes through the parts of the brain that absorb that information and interpret that information. So it's a much shorter path, which is why it's so important and why it's so connected to your nervous system and your emotions and things like that. I didn't know that, right? That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm in adult school now as an adult, right? Pretending to be an adult. And in reality, I'm just a little kid. But I sent out this big adult to go learn. And now I get to come back and teach my 5-year-old. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. How does that resonate? Does that feel good?
I'm like, you sent out your protector, like you're safe, you're strong now. And now that it's like, you've got this, this little boy can learn and feel and speak. Say, I don't like this. I do like this. This is scary because you're like, it was just really sweet. I mentioned earlier, I'm a little close to my cycle. I'm getting a little emotional. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of what it feels like in some ways.
Yeah.
It's a different little shift in perspective and lens for me that I actually really, really like. And I think that I'm going to use it for a while.
Yeah.
So
I like that. I didn't understand. I didn't know that the pathway was such a difference. Like it was so much shorter. I knew that smell was super important and that it triggered memories. That I learned about PTSD and CPTSD and the way that you get triggered and have those. So I knew that it would pull up just as scent can take you places. And I really like essential oils and do stuff. So I had like an awareness of the importance of, but just having that, there's something about it. There's more of it being such a close path. All of this, the scientific-y parts of it that I don't have a lot of. I know it's the olfactory nerve. I know that sciencey part, but I just like it stimulates memories. You can use scent to create memories. You can use scent when you're going through a healing process to bring things up. You can use scent to heal through. You can use scent to calm. You can use scent to, and sometimes, I don't know what it's called. There's like, I think there's like scent hallucinations. Like you can have audio hallucinations.
Oh my God, can you hallucinate from a scent?
No. I think it's like you
can just smell something and then trip out?
that would be cool.
There's probably something like that,
Probably.
right?
I don't know what that is. It's no, you can smell things that aren't there. We want to take a moment and really thank you for sharing your time with us. We know it's a valuable asset that you have, and we're honored that you're spending it with us. We both have experiences over the years where podcasts have helped us and influenced us greatly. That's why we're so passionate about podcasting, and we have a big mission with this show. We aim to reach over 1 million people, and we need your help. If you wouldn't mind doing these 3 things, it will help us grow and expand and reach more people. First off, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. You can click the notification button as well so you don't miss an episode each time a new one is released. Secondly, if you would take a minute and leave us a review, that helps the podcast grow and expand as well. And last up, share it with somebody who you think might benefit, because we believe we all do better when we heal together. That's it. Thank you. We appreciate everything. Now back to the show. And so we've connected, like a lot of people get sense when an energy is off. They get smells of things when something's different, when something is out there, when something is shifting, when there's a disturbance in the force. Sometimes, I get scents that tell me, sometimes you can smell energy that something's off. And a lot of times it throws me, because I'll go around the house like a crazy person trying to identify something that nobody else can smell.
Do you smell that?
And it's like, it's maddening. It almost makes you, and sometimes it's just face lotion,
Sometimes the dog farted.
Sometimes it's a new face lotion and you're like, what is it? But, oh my goodness. So
I'm realizing as we're talking about all of this, right, I'm really glad that we decided to kind of, because we have all these ideas for the podcast at times, and we're like, we're going to talk about this, and we got this topic in mind. And today I wanted to talk about this because it was fresh. It kind of was in my space from waking up in the morning. But I'm really grateful that we did, because it's giving me this new, like I'm saying, right, this new awareness and this new insight. And I want to talk a little bit too about, I was telling you this the other day after Jiu-Jitsu, where I've done Jiu-Jitsu for so long, and it's at a point now where it is my yoga. It is another form of yoga. It's this way of practicing something fully, like Jiu-Jitsu is just perpetually you'll just always have something new to learn, right? There's always something new to learn in Jiu-Jitsu. So you never master it. It's just this ongoing experience. But through the process of mastering it, of experiencing it, of practicing it, there comes a point where, and I think it probably does for everybody, right? Not necessarily everybody does it this way, but it comes a point where it just starts to become this huge reflection for life, where I can see it through that lens all the time. And so now when I'm in the flow of jiu-jitsu and I'm going to class and I'm training and I'm doing all of these things, I can either put on the hat of like, okay, I'm just going to jiu-jitsu and we're just going to fucking roll, or I'm going to work. I'm going to see how it's reflecting back to me what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through. And I'm going to give you an example of that, because there was this moment where I was on bottom, somebody was on top, they had my back, they had their hooks in. This guy, I love him to death, and he's really strong and really big and was making my life horrible in this moment. Pushing down, I could barely move. He was in the process of trying to choke me unconscious. And in those moments, it was like my brain was racing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of this experience. Everything I was trying to do wasn't working. So just think now, as I describe this experience of getting choked, how this applies to life, right? I was really afraid. I didn't know what to do. Definitely my nervous system was super fried and taxed at that point. I'm losing oxygen. I feel like I'm getting closer to death, even though I'm just going to pass out, right? And what I had to do in the moment in order to get out of it was to go towards it. So think of it this way, where the choke and the pain and everything that I was experiencing that was threatening me, that I was so afraid of, that I was resisting, because I was super resistant to it, right? I'm like tight-jawed, pinched up, very resistant to this moment. In order to get through it, I had to let go. I had to go towards the thing that I was afraid of in order to get out of it, in order to see, how to find my way through it. So I just gave in to the choke. Instead of resisting it, I relaxed. Instead of struggling against it, I moved towards it and let it, come towards me. And what that did, from like the standpoint of jiu-jitsu, was he was still trying to choke me, but suddenly I was able to find a new, like, little tiny spot where I could continually like survive and breathe, which then eventually led to me being able to get out, where because I softened a part of my body, it opened up another part where I could breathe more and I could get more oxygen and survive long enough to get out. Now, he's probably got a whole other story, right? He's probably got a whole other experience where he's like, yeah, I just, eventually let go because I'm not trying to kill you. And that's probably maybe part of it too.
I know who you're talking about.
Right.
Dude's totally trying to kill you.
Yeah, he definitely was trying to choke me out. And the realization that I had was very cool and profound in that moment. But I was thinking about jiu-jitsu from that lens and perspective of like, it's just this metaphor for life. I'm just constantly learning from the experiences that I have in jiu-jitsu. We have the same experiences with yoga, right? Where yoga is this metaphor for how you move in through life and everything like that. And then it was like, on the way home, I was like, you know what the greatest metaphor for life is? It's life. Like, I don't need to have an experience of life in order to have a metaphor for life.
Right.
Life itself is pretty fucking awesome when it comes to like a metaphor for life, right? I'm like, I can look at what's going on in my everyday life right now, and I don't need to externalize it and push it out onto a practice or onto a martial arts or onto a yoga or onto something else for me to be able to kind of see it. But I think that's what those things do, is jiu-jitsu gives me the opportunity to be outside of my head with things and to see it in front of me. And so I can take the problem that I'm so wrapped up in and tightly stuck with in regards to like life or a decision or feeling, pent up or something like that. And I can put it out onto the mirror of jiu-jitsu and see what it's showing me. But reality, it's just reflecting life. It's the same thing. So I don't need an external thing in order to kind of like see a metaphor for life and recognize that sometimes I resist things that I just need to soften to and relax, and I'll actually be able to go through them, right? How many times do we have moments in life that we're very, very tense about and we're so scared about and we're so tense about? And the reality is, if we just soften into those moments and go through those moments with a little bit more, I think, grace for ourselves and a little bit more patience and understanding for ourselves and a softness for ourselves, then those things aren't as scary, right? You'll get through those things. I don't know. I don't know if that's as profound as it was for me, but in the moment I was like, oh, I don't need a metaphor for life. Life itself is just this really good metaphor. Does that make sense?
It does. I actually think it's pretty profound. Like,
so
you
many
make
times
me want to be a jiu-jitsu person.
Yeah, it's great.
I know. It's like I've tried. I've taken like your class, which I love your class, but I've like gone out there and I've done it. And I am not.
I was thinking about it too, where
yeah.
it is, because the beginning of this episode, we're talking about like somatic stuff and being in our body and nervous system and everything like that. For men, and jiu-jitsu is not just for men, right?
Yeah.
For humans, but specifically because men, I think, are so resistant to, like, if you say on the healing journey, you need to find some sort of somatic practice, right? Yoga is a great somatic practice. It gets you in your body.
I like that one.
Breathing, dance.
These are my go-tos.
Right.
Yeah,
All
like,
of these
woo-hoo.
things that are very somatically based to get you connected to what your body is feeling and to be present in your body, right? Which is incredibly important. And I think we've talked about some examples over the course of this episode why. I don't think there's a better somatic practice for men than jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere else to be other than in your body. immediately takes you, like, especially when you're brand new and you come in and you're like all over the place in your head, all the fear, all the anxiety, it present moment drops you right into your body, because suddenly you're like, I'm choking. This person is killing me right now, right? That's the beginning part of it. But I was thinking about it rolling too the other day, where it was like, I have awareness of what like my left foot is doing right now, as well as my right hand, all at the same time. I have awareness of where my weight and my hips are located right now in relation to the world around me. I have awareness of how my breathing is right now in this moment and where it needs to shift and change. So like it puts me so 100% in my body that I don't have another option, right? If I'm not in my body when I'm practicing jiu-jitsu, I become it's obvious, right? Because I get choked, or I have to tap, or my arm breaks or something, right? Somebody will do something to me that will be like, hey, you weren't paying attention to your left arm, and I'm going to break it now. And you're like, you're right, I wasn't paying attention to my left arm. Thank you for highlighting that. Now, next time I'm going to pay attention to my left arm, right? It's a really, really good somatic practice for men because it does those things. Oh. And that learning curve, you have to get over that learning curve, and eventually you get to that spot where it becomes much easier to be in your body and to be with your body, and to, because we joke all the time too, right? Where, I mean, there's countless memes online about men in their 40s and jiu-jitsu and creaky old bodies, and, you know, but the reality is it really connects you with your body. I have awareness of the pains in my body that come from jiu-jitsu because I'm connected to my body. Like, I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel what it needs. I can feel what it doesn't need. I can feel what's good for it, what's not good for it. Like, it's a beautiful somatic practice. So if you're somebody that's like not super into breath work or yoga or, you know, whatever else, like the idea of getting connected to your body somatically, or like if you want a good thing to tell your husband to do that secretly is going to help them heal and get connected to their body somatically, send them to jiu-jitsu. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your go-to then? Is that the one you were going to say? Your go-to is
that's
jiu-jitsu?
Well, right now,
yeah,
that's a big go-to for me.
It's a good one.
Right? Because I'm using it so much. I'm practicing that skill set of being somatically present through jiu-jitsu and being in my body through jiu-jitsu. And it's really helpful, right? Yoga, we do yoga every week. We're practicing yoga. I'm breath. Deep breaths. Always trying to breathe. What about you?
All those, like, well, not all those, because jiu-jitsu, no, that's not for me, even though I want it to be. And it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not for me. The yoga, the yoga, do the breathing when I think I can. The one that's coming up for me a lot is honestly the one that is my go-to right now. I think I even talked about it on the last episode, whether I did or not, I don't remember, but it's my go-to right now. It's super, super helpful. We had Annabelle on one of our episodes, and you can go back and listen or look her up, Annabelle's Glasses. And in some of her content, I don't remember if she talked about it on the podcast or not, but in some of her content, she talks about how if you're just like to take your finger and put it like right here on the top of your head and look up to it and just try to like really look up to that part. And that's where you're rolling your eyes. When you're experiencing, it wasn't on the podcast actually. But when you're going through something, when you're going through, whether it's you're like experiencing an emotion and coming back up a trigger, you're trying to heal through an experience, trying to heal through a memory, trying to be able to feel it, because it's important to get into your body. It's very important. And when you're feeling things, you need to feel it to heal it. But sometimes the feeling can become an overwhelming thing to the point where people can't handle the feeling. So they jump out. And then it's this thing that they keep coming back and building and putting layers and layers and layers around. And so one of hers that she had learned that she taught was like looking up to that space when you're feeling intense emotions, is as the emotions come through, and it helps you and your body still feel the emotion, still process the emotion without it getting stuck in your body.
So it's touching the top of your head.
That's just like where you don't
Okay.
have to do it. It's your eyes. It's
you're-
like rolling your eyes up, looking at that space.
Visualizing, looking at the top of your head. Okay.
And you're holding that space. And that's also like one of the steps in the Kali breath, which I adore. So that's like in yoga, sticking your tongue out like a lion's breath. But adding the Kali breath as your eyes are going up, and as you exhale, you're really visualizing like that black smoke that's just, you can just put it as black smoke coming out, and you can assign, anything that no longer serves, anything, all of the different ways that you can play. This isn't what this is about. You get to put whatever thing that you don't want anymore in that. So that has been my go-to, and it has been really helpful of when I'm feeling that, because I don't want to shut my emotions off. I don't want to not feel and then have to keep repeating the feeling. I don't want to have to keep repeating the thing that I want to feel it and get through it. And that's really hard. Just the fact that I want to feel it and get through it is a profound evolution that I'm like,
that is so huge, babe, because what that
Yeah.
means is that you feel safe to be in your body and feel emotions.
I've been working on it. It's
Right?
really fucking hard.
That's so huge.
Yeah.
Like you are teaching your little 5-year-old girl, the little 5-year-old
Yeah.
Steph inside of you, that it's safe to be in her body, and you're giving her skill sets to feel those things. And when she's like, it's really scary and really hard, I don't want to feel this, you'd be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is how you can do it. You can just simply imagine focusing on the top of your head and just continue to feel whatever you might be. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
And, it's where you're at. Give it a shot when if you're feeling crappy emotions anyways, like what do you got to lose? If you're
Right.
driving, don't do it.
No, I say do it when you're driving.
Don't do it.
Close your eyes and
It's
look at the
not
top of your
funny. People are going to be like, "Ah."
Jiu-Jitsu is really safe to do when you're driving too.
Oh, there's car jiu-jitsu. Right. But so that's been something that's been really helpful for me. I'm rolling my eyes back and tongue out, breathing, and I'm usually sobbing when I do it.
That's awesome.
And it makes a difference. Like all the steps, picturing the smoke coming out. There's also there's so many things I learned, like that technique years and years and years ago that was supposed to help with like an asthma attack. And it's breathing like forest tree green, thinking about the pine scent coming in through your feet and exhaling black smoke. And there's just so much that comes with that. And you can tie whatever meaning you need to it. You can tie whatever works from you. Are you moving your eyes to looking at a different spot? Are you able to like really release? You're breathing, you're getting into your body. But that's personally what's been working for me. And
It's one of your recent go-tos.
yeah, it's one of my recent go-tos. And it's also hard to go to. I'm not like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go do this, because I'm really emotional at that space. It's really challenging. It's hard. And it's being really vulnerable in that space. It feels incredibly vulnerable. And so it's a surrender too, because it's incredibly vulnerable, but it's been helping.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love how you and I both find similar, because we there's totally a bunch of things that we're like, oh, we do it together even, right? And then mine is like, I need to go get choked by a 200-pound man that could kill me in order to learn how to like let go into some emotions.
I'm like, been there, done that. No, thank you. I'm gonna breathe and dance.
I'm gonna stick my
do
tongue
some
out
yoga.
and look up to the top of my head. I love it.
I love that. Like, I totally got triggered. Please continue. And you said like the description you gave
Right.
put me into a response of
Flashback
like,
somewhere.
oh. So please continue though.
You're good. I think this has been an interesting episode. I'm really grateful that we had it. I think that it's a fun conversation. I'm curious to hear what you're teaching your inner children. That sounds weird to say it like that, because I think about it that way too, where I'm not just teaching a 5-year-old. There's a 10-year-old version of me that needs to be taught some things. There's a 15-year-old,
Oh, yeah.
right? There's all these different
Have you
little
met your
versions
inner
of
teenager
me.
yet?
They're fun. I like my inner teenager.
Me too.
He's super into great music. So we want to hear from you. If you resonated with this, if there's lessons that you're teaching your inner child, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great topic. What do
Me
you think?
too.
So,
I like it.
okay, everybody. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for following us. Go subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. We have we keep talking about it, But the truth is we have some really amazing things coming out this year, and you want to be around to enjoy them because it's going to be awesome and hopefully help you on your path and on your journey, because we all do better
when we heal together.
Expect the best, everybody, and plan for the greatest. We'll see you soon.
Wait and see, you and me, we were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal insights and experiences, things that we have found to be helpful and healing on our journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.